Hi,
Hello,
very
How are
nice to
you?
see you. I'm Dimitris.
and I'm George.
Hi.
Well, if
Nice to meet
it's I think we we may have a little delay in the sound,
Like,
a
you.
lag.
Okay.
So it's very nice to see you. And if it's okay with you, we may start the interview right now.
Okay.
okay. First of all, we would like to thank you for agreeing to give us this interview and for your time.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
So let's start from the beginning. When you were a teenager, you created a huge fan club named Starfleet. Is that right? Would you tell us a little about the club?
Well, it started out, there was a club that existed in the 70s called Starfleet Command, and the organization was kind of defunct and not running very much by the late 70s. So some friends of mine and I started our own little fan club in Eugene, Oregon, which was called the USS Republic.
Right.
And we were like our own little starship, and I was the captain,
Wow.
and we had meetings and went on, missions and things that we used to do. Like Gene Roddenberry used to do a tour around the country giving speeches at universities and state fairs, and we used to go and take the whole group with us um, to do stuff like that. And then we found out about the Starfleet Command organization and wanted to be part of that, but it really wasn't functioning at the time. So we kind of took it into our own hands to create Starfleet and revitalize the whole concept of having chapters and of starships and star bases all around the world. So that's how that started out when I was in high school.
That's great. But at a certain point, you got to actually work on Star Trek. When was that?
Well, right after I graduated from college, I went to Los Angeles in 1985, and my first year in Los Angeles was not very successful. Um, so I ended up going back to Oregon, and in 1986, I worked on a TV movie with James Garner and James Woods um, called Promise, and I got to get my hands into the television business. And on the day that that project wrapped, I heard on the radio that Paramount was going to do a new Star Trek TV series. So I knew Susan Sackett in Gene Roddenberry's office because she and Gene were official honorary members of our fan club, Starfleet. So I knew Susan for a while, and I sent my resume down to her, and I actually got called for an interview with Bob Justman and to be a production assistant on Next Generation. But they decided to hire people who had already worked at the studio, who were familiar with the facilities and the buildings and the different executives. And so I ended up instead becoming a tour guide at Paramount Studios that summer. And I was working on doing tours and live audience shows like Cheers and Happy Day, or not Happy Days, Family Ties, and the Arsenio Hall show and stuff like that. And you guys still there?
Yeah.
Right, yes, of
Looks
course.
like it froze up.
So
Uh, okay.
maybe we can close our
So
video
the
for one
cam,
second.
are you guys still there?
Yeah, we are
Okay.
there. And
Do you
Okay.
see us right now?
Okay.
Okay,
okay.
that's great.
Okay.
So I like,
So
yeah, please.
Please go on.
go
Go
ahead.
on.
That's just saying that before the screen froze, I
Uh-huh.
was doing live audience shows, and then one day I got a chance to work at the screening of Encounter at Farpoint, They were having a studio screening for the cast and crew, and my boss in the tour guide department said they need 2 pages to go and do door security and check people in at the door. He goes, "Do you want to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So while I was doing that, I ran into Bob Justman again, and Bob said, "Oh, I didn't know you were working at Paramount." And I said, "Yeah." And then the very next day, they had an opening because one of the production assistants had been promoted, and he called and asked me if I wanted to work on Next Generation. So that's how that started.
Well, that's great. I'm very interested to know, how was it for you? How did you feel getting from being a fan to actually work on Star Trek? How did you feel?
Well, it was pretty. I mean, it was exhilarating in the beginning. It was very exciting to have a dream come true. But I tell people to beware of your dreams because they can be nightmares. It was fun and exciting to be a fan, to work on Next Generation, but it was also sometimes a little a nightmare because people don't understand fans, and they have all weird ideas about fans, and they ask you questions like, "How much can you get for this prop?" Or at a convention or whatever. And I'm like, so sometimes it was great, and sometimes it was kind of weird. But in the long run, it was pretty cool for me.
Right. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about yesterday's Enterprise. And I know you've written a whole book about the subject, but first of all, let me ask you about Michael Piller's open script submission policy. I don't think we have this nowadays. Is it right?
No.
So how was that different then? How was being able to pitch in a script of your own?
Well, the open submission policy started because Michael wanted to get more submissions coming in. When Michael first started on the show during the 3rd season of Next Generation, he was replacing another producer named Michael Wagner, who had come on at the beginning of the 3rd season. But Michael Wagner became extremely overwhelmed by the whole process, and he leaving the show. And so Michael Piller came in, and when Michael started, we were really behind schedule with scripts, and the show was already in production, and they were barely, putting together a script every week to get the show on. So Michael convinced the studio to let him open the submission policy for freelance writers, and no other studio has ever. They don't do that. It's just something they don't like to do, and Paramount doesn't like to do it. But Michael convinced them to let him do it, and so we started getting script submissions, and we got thousands of them. And by this time, I was the script coordinator, and I was doing the same kind of job that Lolita Faggio would be doing after me. And so I was the one processing all the script submissions, and we would get like 5,000 scripts submitted every year. So it was kind of an exciting opportunity for me and my writing partner to pitch an idea and have them buy it and to do yesterday's Enterprise.
How is 2 different people writing one script? How is the cooperation procedure going?
Well, Trent and I's process with yesterday's Enterprise was kind of unique because he had already written a script for yesterday's Enterprise, but his version of the story didn't involve any time alteration, and it didn't involve war with the Klingons or anything like that. So I had been working on a separate story idea about Sarek and a visit to the Guardian of Forever planet, where the Vulcans have an archaeological team studying ancient Vulcan history. But when Sarek arrives at the planet with the Enterprise to bring the archaeological team back to Vulcan, there's an accident that happens, and in time, through the portal, Surak, who is the founder of Vulcan philosophy, gets killed by accident, which alters the timeline and creates an alternate universe where the Romulans and the Vulcans have joined forces, because now the Vulcans have never evolved into peaceful, logical people. So they've destroyed the Klingons and are on the verge of destroying the Federation when the story continues. But when I pitched this idea to Michael Piller, he didn't want to use the Sarek part, and he didn't want to go to the Guardian of Forever planet. So he said, why don't you combine the alternate universe story and the war with yesterday's Enterprise story that Trent wrote, so that when the Enterprise comes through time, it creates an alternate universe. So that's how that story started, and a lot of people work as teams, and sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not easy, but that's just the way it is with.
Regarding the content of both your original script and in the final, we see that little changes in the past create large effects in the future. Do you really believe that? Do you believe that relatively insignificant events of the past can affect the future on a large scale?
My idea of time is that you create branches off of time, so that if you alter something, it would create an alternative timeline that would be parallel to the original timeline. I don't think that time repeats itself, so I don't think that you can go back in time and change the future. I think you can go back in time and create a different timeline, which is kind of what happened with J.J. Abrams in the Star Trek movie franchise. They go back in time now. There's a different timeline that has branched off, but the original timeline still exists, and it still happens. Okay. But it's
and you also co-wrote a Voyager episode named Prime Factor, and in this situation, we were on the other side of the fence of Prime Directive that denied us something that we needed, something valuable. So in a way, according to the Prime Directive, a group of people that consider themselves to be more mature because they have more technology and more knowledge, they make a decision about another group of people that they consider them to be less progressed and more immature and not ready for the truth and for the knowledge and the power of the knowledge. So do you agree with such an act?
Right. Well, the Prime Directive is an interesting concept because I agree with it in concept in terms of not interfering with less sophisticated cultures. But Next Generation took the concept to a different level when it started suggesting that the Prime Directive involved even geological effects. Like there was a whole planet that was going to be destroyed by some natural disaster, and they said they weren't going to interfere with the natural progression. But to me, that's not what the Prime Directive is really about. If people are in threat of being wiped out, I don't think that that's what the Prime Directive is about. I think the Prime Directive is about not interfering in the cultural and social element of another race of people. But the interesting thing about prime factors was that for my idea was that it was based on
we were experiencing it.
Is there?
Okay, should we?
We froze again.
Maybe it's better now.
Okay. So what I was saying was prime factor was based on an idea that I had that goes back to the original series from Assignment Earth, the episode with Gary Seven.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the one where Gary Seven is the alien who's trying to prevent a nuclear war on Earth?
Yes.
And at the very end of the episode, he escapes and beams back to the other side of the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk says to Scotty, trace the beam and see where it came from. And Scotty says, it's from so far away that our sensors don't go that far.
Mm-hmm.
So my idea was that we, on Voyager, come to that planet on the other side of the galaxy where Gary Seven came from. And so they have this transporter technology that can beam people all the way across the galaxy. So that's where that idea came from. But again, Michael Piller said, no, we're not using things from the original Star Trek. But we managed to keep most of the idea there. As far as the other civilizations using a prime directive to not share technology, I think when you have comparable like technology, that probably isn't a viable policy. I mean, even the Vulcans like shared technology with Earth after context, so we became more advanced with warp technology and stuff like that.
I'd like to ask you, you've organized many conventions over the years, and you were also an MC in those. How did you feel as an MC? Did you feel it was a job you had to do? Did you feel like one of the guests or a very lucky member of the audience, maybe?
The video is breaking up a little bit. Are you talking about conventions?
Should we again let the camera for a while?
Maybe we're losing the signal.
Let's call again once. Let's call again. We will try to call you again.
Again?
Hello.
Shall I repeat my question, or did you hear?
Yes, please.
Well, you have organized and you were the MC of many conventions over the years. Is that right?
Yes.
How did you feel as an MC? Did you feel it was a job you had to do, or did you feel like a guest or a very lucky member of the audience, maybe?
Well, I enjoyed doing that because I got to interact with other Star Trek fans and to also share information that I had from working on Star Trek. And then Lolita and I had our own company, our own convention company for a while, and we ran a big convention at the Royal Albert Hall in London. So to me, it wasn't just a job, it was really fun and exciting. And my favorite thing about doing conventions is traveling all over the world and meeting fans from different countries and just sharing information about Star Trek. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Right. And I just think you also share a story credit on a Deep Space Nine novel, the 34th Rule. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm interested to know how does writing a novel differs from writing for a script for a television series?
Well, the process of developing a story for a book is similar to coming up with ideas for television. In fact, the story that we came up with for the book was actually a pitch that we had for an episode. And we went in and pitched the idea with Armin Shimmerman, and the producers decided they weren't interested in it. So we didn't want to just waste the idea. So we worked with Armin and developed the story. See, I'm more of a story person. I didn't actually write the book. David George wrote the book, and Armin and I worked with him on the actual story. And the story idea came from an inspiration of hearing the stories that George Takei used to tell about his childhood when he was sent to an internment camp during World War II. And so that's where we came up with the idea for the 34th Rule. And then we did a basic outline of the story about it, and George wrote the book. And the same thing happened with yesterday's interview. Trent and I developed the story for the episode, but we didn't get to write the script. And also on Voyager, we developed the story, so other writers were involved. I think we're frozen again.
Yeah.
Sort of there.
Yeah.
We're still here.
Okay.
Except you guys look like Medusans.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't find.
So let us ask you a couple of more questions, and we won't bother you more. So over the years, you have done a lot of work with Star Trek as a producer, as a scriptwriter, as an actor, as an MC. So let's imagine that Q appears and offers to grant you a wish that for the rest of your life you get to choose one role, one job to do for Star Trek, but only one. What would you choose?
One job working for Star Trek. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'm not really an actor. I was only an extra in a couple things, and I was never actually a producer on Star Trek. I was an associate producer on another show that Michael Piller did called The Dead Zone, which I enjoyed doing. I think if I could only pick one job to do on Star Trek, though, it would be fun to be a producer. But more of the Rick Berman producer.
Nice. Okay.
That's it, fun.
And why not? One final question. And are there any projects that you are currently involved in? Do you have any plans for the future?
Well, I'm not working on any projects at the moment. I'm between jobs at the moment. I just spent 3 years working for the Fox Broadcasting Company, which is TV network, and I was working on reality shows like American Idol and The X Factor. So for the last 3 years, that's what I've been doing, and now I'm just trying to find work closer to home. I have commuting and less driving to do, but I don't have any specific projects lined up at the moment.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything we want to ask you. So
Okay.
we'd like to thank you very, very much for your time.
So when are you going to have a Star Trek convention again in Greece?
Well, I hope soon. Would you come?
I would. I
So-
would. I've only been to Greece once. Well, maybe twice. I've been to Athens and I've been to Santorini.
Okay.
Oh, great.
So we will definitely take you up on your offer.
Okay.
Would be more than happy to have you come to Greece and meet you in person.
That would be fantastic.
So
I hope it happens.
right. So thank you
Thank you
very
again.
much again, and
Have a nice day.
have a nice day.
You too. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.